Hi, welcome back. In today's video, just want to really, well, maybe one for people that are beginning out in bonsai. Just want to really explain creating taper and obviously the importance of it. Obviously when you see trees in nature, well, you know, singly grown trees, I guess in a group planting or something, you wouldn't be so worried about taper so much, but definitely single trees or twin trunk trees or whatever, you still want to have some taper in there to give an illusion of, you know, kind of scale. Yeah, without it really, like I say, the tree won't look like a perfect miniature. The minute you actually achieve a little bit of taper in a tree, you kind of see, begins to start looking something. Yeah, really, like I say, one for the people starting out. I just wanted to show them, because I've got quite a few examples of taper beginning at different levels. I've got, you know, a lot lying around really. Nibirian taper is something I'm pretty good at so far. Not many of my trees are at full branch structure or ramification stage, so I'll no doubt we have a lot to learn there still as well. Although that Hawthorn, you know, the branches I'm quite happy with on that. I've made that from scratch, so that was one of my first bigger Hawthorns. It's just starting to come on now. But yeah, back to the taper as such then, creating that. So obviously I've done a video just gone about bulking up trees. Now part of that process as well comes hand in hand with creating taper. If you you know, if you've got a desired height or whatever, you can cut it there and then come off it with a new leader and begin to create thinner and thinner sections and shorter sections as well as you go down. That's best. That one there is probably a little bit long, but I actually quite like how this is, and we've got another option there if we want it. And this is a hazel tree, you know, big leaves, not the best for bonsai, but I got given this and I saw it had initially quite a nice taper in the trunk, so we persevered with it. I just started cutting back some of these branches. These ones the other day I only just started cutting back. Obviously these can fatten up quite quickly, so I don't want to obviously miss the opportunity of keeping them smaller. I could make these bigger in a flash really by pulling another shoot off there. So let's go back to how we've made this taper. So you see a cut was made initially there. Part of this might have been original, and I think it was. So another cut was made there, so it obviously forked out, and I selected one that looked like a nice kind of angle of movement. And then we cut another one off of there, and that's allowed for this part to grow. And like I say, we'll probably in the end go for this one, but maybe use this to actually pull more into the trunk and heal them wounds. But I don't think it's unacceptable, that part there, really. It's got a little bend in it as well. And hazel, really, although the leaf size is a bit of a pain, the bark's really nice, the healing's great, new branches all over. So probably a good thing for a novice to muck around with. I wouldn't invest too much time into this species, really. You know, I'm experimenting with a sycamore, which is probably worse than this, so, you know, if you could get them down to sort of those little sizes in the end, it wouldn't be too bad, would it? But this is in the very early stages of development, so as you can see, really nice example of tapering happening there, and it has got a side where there's not so many big cuts, you see. So there's usable parts on that tree, and like I say, I was given that, so it's not something I've, you know, sought after, gone and found it, dug it up, put loads of effort into. Kind of, it was a freebie that I'm persevering with. A couple more examples of creating taper here. Well, not a couple more, we'll start with one, because they're both different trees. This oak tree, this has been like a cut and chop kind of method of creating this shape. No wire was added to this tree either. So you can see it's just had numerous cuts along the way, and they've healed up really well. One there, one round there, there's probably one lower down here at some point as well. Then maybe with all I've done that with a little cane or something has maybe just pulled it to the area I want it, but there's never been any wire on there. And as you can see, allowing each area to get to a thickness and cutting it has created this kind of taper running through the tree, and all the little cuts have healed as they've gone. And I think by the time this gets to its kind of desired size, they would be non-existent and almost completely hidden. So a little bit of a slower way of doing it, but you know, a nice kind of really nice trunk on that. And we see the bark down here as well. I just chucked some more compost around these the other days. But the bark really is getting quite ancient down there. So that one's that's worked well. I'm really pleased with that, and some good taper in that tree. Another one that's been really easy to work with, and I've got various ones of it, Norway maple. I think this is some ornamental, maybe a bit like a Crimson King or something. Some people call them sugar maples as well. Another good example of creating taper. So this was a little branch initially, and this would have always been the leader. This hasn't been cut yet, this one, but I've bent this branch up preemptively and bent the main leader over a little, just to allow for the next kind of leader to come into place and create a lump of taper. So this one's been slowed down. I've took the tips out of it, and then there's plenty of buds along here that we can, use. We have to wire this and put a little bit of movement into it. But again, just a really good example of leaving a sacrifice branch, in this case the whole terminal bud if you like, the main leader shoot. Maybe we'll leave that for 2 or 3 more seasons, go up a few pot sizes. In the ground would be ideal. If I had the facilities, that's where most of these trees would be, just in this development stage. And then, like I say, we'll make a chop there eventually. These heal lovely. This will become the new leader section. Maybe we come back off of it again and do the same thing, a bit like the oak. So you can see how it kind of happens, although the oak was probably down a little bit lower. I don't want these to be massive trees in the end. We're just trying to create a nice kind of powerful trunk at the moment. And again, going back to my previous video, about bulking them up, there is no greater way other than growing a big sacrifice branch with a whole leader and just letting it grow wild. So there's a couple of good examples there again, and a couple that are really set in their ways, but we've managed to create some taper in them, are these hawthorns. So again, collected trees. This one's 2 years collected, and this one probably only this year, I think. Yeah, this year, this one. And again, now we're not going to do much about this here. We can cut it wherever we want and create taper that way, but there was such a nice piece of movement there, we wouldn't want to really cut that any lower. And luckily we've had a nice bud come out here. Now all these other ones, I've been keeping an eye on this from a distance kind of thing, and as these got to a all right size, I've just nipped them in the bud there and put a little bit of movement in them. But one that I selected for a top here that's presented itself at the moment is this one, and we're just growing it out to kind of bring it and keep the rest of the tree now. And I'll have to just flush that off in spring along there. And whether we lose some of these back branches or whether we can do something there, I'll have to have a look when we come to make the cut. But for a year old, that's quite convincing. Obviously this isn't a year old, but for a year in my custody, if you like, I think that looks quite promising, really. I'm quite happy with that, and we've managed to achieve a good front. Even this root and this flare comes towards you there. But yeah, good example there of again creating taper. And fast forward, like I say, a year from this process to and then you get to here. That's 1 more year. Now there's a lot of kind of mistakes in this tree in a way. There's some deer damage here that may or may not look good one day. I'll have to clean that up and see what's going on there. I did put some wire marks in this by accident last year, and they seem to have grown out without causing any lumpy, bumpy kind of inverse bits. There was a kind of twin trunk here, but because it was like a hedging tree, they'd grown into each other and wasn't useful as, with this curve on this one. It would have never looked good. So I picked the better one out of the 2 and cut this one off. You can see the healing on it's been really good, really, to be fair. Again, growing out this leader, the new leader, helped pull out a lot of that, and it started to heal on. But if we just turn it, that kind of ugly bit there, which you can kind of hide to the side, has actually created taper into this part, and then this is a nice curve. I don't actually want that to taper anymore. It will almost fatten up a bit there anyway. I don't say as the roots recover and bolster out as well, that will help that area flare a little. And then we get into the new taper, which was the new leader from last year, and then a little section from this year, which I may or may not keep. And then you can see the other cut, the initial chop there as well, which is healing over really well. And that's similar. So like I say, it's kind of, this is fast forward a year from this one, and that's kind of what you can expect there. Yeah, really quite pleased with that actually, and you can almost see a little pyramid in the branches there. Yeah, quite nice on a tall trunk as well, I find, because it's quite a thick trunk, you can get away with that there. So yeah, really quite pleased with that, although there's a few mistakes I've made there, and I know I've made, or even just selecting the material. But like I say, a lot of these trees I get free, and I get the option of digging it out, or if the land's going to get cleared. So there's not too much invested other than a cold kind of spring morning or whatever, digging them out. And just a couple more little ones here, again, just for people starting out, so you can see how these shapes are kind of made. And again, what should we start with? Well, we've got this little larch here. This hasn't got much going on. This is one of the ones from one of my earlier videos this year. again, we cut it back. I've done this kind of rough ginning here. Probably not natural enough really, but that was only done roughly with a knife and left. No lime or nothing was put on there either, no lime sulphur. But again, to show you this tree, a good example of tapering now, and a nice curve created. So we created movement with the taper, and no wire again, just selecting the branches that were there. So a lot of these trees, they haven't really been made, you know, the movement was never made by human hand. It was selected, and then we've worked with what we've got. Obviously this branch will probably be in the way, that could go, but these other branches are quite nicely spread out, and I've just been nipping the new growth back, and it's almost made little pads already on what were, you know, brand new fresh branches. But we'll have to cut them back and start creating ramification. But this was a collected tree again this year, so you can see the turnaround can start looking promising. It's got a long way to go, obviously. One other good example I've got here is a field maple. It seems a bit mildewy, this. I don't know why it's gone like that. It's forever sending out new shoots around here as well. But again, very similar in the way that this has been created. You know, cutting back, chop method if you like. I'll just find my drill. I'm going to get this fitter out of here. I've probably pulled at this a couple of times and not successfully got it out, so I'll have that out of there. But yeah, again, to go back to this tree, the real reason we're showing you it is, again, the next phase of the taper is being created. And I've bent this one over, so I've got a little bit of movement in it now, and it's just the next little part there been made. Whether we keep this branch or not remains there, to be fair, because it will probably hinder the healing of that cut. And you can see, look at the healing there as well on this 1 year, and not even that much growth above it really, so that's really good. And again down here you can see that bit's healed really well. Really quite an interesting trunk, that one. And again, a nice front there. Maybe we can bring some new branches out on the outside of these bends and have a small tree. And you can see the leaf size, although the mildew, the leaf size is brilliant. And again, that's without a small pot, really working on it, ramification in the branches. So you know these things are achievable when you see a leaf size that big and you haven't put the effort in yet. So, but that'll be one for another day. So yeah, really, this is, like I say, it's all about just creating taper, and that's something I've got a lot of at the moment. That's, you know, Nivarian taper is where we're most, you know, ahead of at the moment. Branches are not far on, you know, on the agenda, shall we say. A few trees are getting to the stage now where we'll be thinking about branches. But yeah, like I said in the previous video as well about bulking up trees, it's not, you know, you can't rush every process. There's no miracle for half of this stuff. It does take time. The last one I'll show you here, because I could go on forever showing you trees of creating taper and examples of that, is this little Scots pine. Now, everything I told you again in this video and the previous video about putting things in small pots and expecting the earth out of them, I've kind of gone against the grain with. But this one had really nice movement, and this branch obviously is worked out for bending up really well with little branches on it. So I didn't want to lose control of this tree, having it in a bigger pot, and losing this kind of delicateness in it. But another really good example of creating taper. Now, I know some of the fancy channels, they'll have things for that, but we'll use this dustpan because we've got it. Now you see, if we hold that there and block off the back of that one, there's a really nice tapering tree. And it is very delicate, you know, maybe this will never be a chunky, you know, trunk tree, but with this back bit here, we'll maybe leave this for another season or two in this tiny pot. We'll just feed it well, water it well, and it will probably double this trunk down here and create even more taper into that section and give us a little bit more room then to, you know, this will naturally get bigger, it's always going to happen. But if we can get this part ahead, then it will give us a little bit of playing room with that. But I'm going to keep this really quite a basic tree and just keep it small and delicate really. So this is one, like I say, I don't want to have it just in a big pot and lose control of it and the needle size go big again. You know, something small for the bench at home just to keep an eye on, but not expecting miracles out of that. That's what I'm saying with that. You know, that trunk isn't just going to become 2 inches in a year all of a sudden, where you might get 2 inches out of that in a bigger pot, growing really well. Well, I hope you found that helpful, and really, like I say, just the last couple of videos, just, you know, not dispelling the myth or whatever, but just kind of saying, like I say with these, it's time and effort, and you can't take the time out of it, unfortunately. Sometimes, like some of these here are going to be 10 years old or whatever to get to that size, just allowed to grow in the ground. What maybe a couple of years less than that, but you could imagine, you know, at least a 5-year period. So yeah, I hope you can take something from that, and like I say, follow us, subscribe to the channel. You know, if you want to see more of this, we'll always update you on trees and projects that we've got going on, and we'll see you in the next one.